committee
Mr.
report.
Speaker,
Ms. Zweiner, for what purpose?
will the gentleman yield for some questions?
Gentleman yield for questions.
Yes, I
The
yield.
gentleman yields.
Thank you, Representative Buckley. And I appreciate that the conference process is a negotiation and that the House can't always get every improvement we've asked for. But I want to highlight one improvement you made to the bill that did not make it through conference. And that was the language in the bill that said that books could remain on the shelves during the challenge process, and instead parents would be notified they'd been challenged so that they could withdraw consent for their children to read those books. Could you talk about why books are now being removed off the shelves?
Yeah, well, the concern for that was the example, if a book is to the level that would be considered for a challenge, that it was to err on the side of protecting children first. And remember that the bill requires that once a book has been challenged and it has been overruled and replaced, that it cannot come up for any sort of other consideration for 2 years. And so it was a compromise there to look at, what really protects kids. And at the end of the day, parents, if there are titles that they're concerned about, the parents can provide those materials to their children individually outside of the school setting.
Yeah, Representative Buckley, I think the reason for my concern is, twofold. One is it looks like the process for considering a book can take quite a long time if a school district has one of these advisory councils. They only have to meet twice a year. And then there's 90 days for a board to act. So we're looking at books potentially being off the shelves for 3/4 of a year, a whole school year, before they might be returned if that's a frivolous challenge.
Well, yeah, that's a fair point. But I think what we're talking about is that throughout a process, an active advisory council would take these up in a more timely manner to do the job required of them. The bill does just set some basic minimum standards that they have to meet. And I think that we're still within the bounds of what can be acceptable and provide for a proper oversight of what our children are exposed to, as well as having the ability to adjudicate, if you will, those contested titles.
Yeah. Are you aware that federal courts in liberal bastions like Alaska and Florida have found that removing books for a long review period is still functionally just a removal?
I'm not advised on the, on some of the legal precedents or legal issues involving that.
Okay. Well, I will represent to you that we do have recent case law from both Florida and Alaska that a board cannot simply remove a book for review and sort of leave it in limbo for months upon months. And I'm worried your bill is setting up that exact constitutional problem here in Texas.
They have 90 days to act, and I think that kind of strikes a fair balance. And then once that that adjudication, for lack of a better term, is completed, then there's a two-year process to protect it.
Now, I do want to make sure everyone understands fully. The 90 days is for board action.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
So if there's an advisory council, they are only required to meet twice a year, so that process could take considerably longer.
That's the minimum requirement. Yeah.
Okay. Representative Buckley, are you aware that in an Austin area school district a couple years ago, just a handful of people challenged over 200 books in a matter of weeks?
I'm not aware of. I'm aware of numerous challenges to books in our libraries, but not of that specific instance.
There were challenges to over 200 books in a very short period of time. Can you sympathize with the logistical challenge that can place on a board or these review committees?
Yeah, I think it's it is a function of governance, and it's a function of parental involvement. The board will appoint a library advisory council, and then we will engage parents and appointees, which, remember, it includes librarians and teachers and community members as well, to collaborate with parents to make sure the review process runs in a way that first of all protects kids, and then second of all, provides for the efficient operation of this process. And it is locally driven. I mean, that's the thing. This is back in the hands of school boards and parents and community members, and it takes some of the other issues, I think, off the table.
Yeah, I mean, Representative Buckley, you and I have discussed this, and I'm really grateful for the local process. I do think that's the right way to go. I think my concern is with the way this bill is written right now, I could go file a challenge for every single book in my daughter's library, and the school district would be required to pull all those books, even if those challenges are completely frivolous, until they have the opportunity to go do that review. Are you concerned about some people gaming the system and removing access to large numbers of books without merit?
I think you sort of point to a hypothetical that is, I would guess, sort of a worst case scenario, but I don't think that's, I think what that does is it sort of overlooks, I think, the sincere deliberation that a board of trustee appointed advisory committee would put towards their role. And when you look at the involvement of that, I think that can mitigate a lot of what you discuss and or with the issue that you've brought up. And in the end, I think that this process, if we really look at our SHAC committees, over time they really have developed into an effective way of having parental involvement and community support in an area that can be very contentious. And I don't hear as much about those issues now that we have functioning SHACs than I used to. So I think that's kind of the model for where we're going.
Yeah, I just think the challenge is one person with a bee in their bonnet can disrupt that entire local process by giving a massive number of books or challenging a massive number of books, and then those books won't be available while they're being reviewed. Representative Buckley, are there limitations in your bill about who can challenge books?
I believe it requires, the council requires that those members of the committee must live within the district boundary, but I don't believe there's own challenges.
Okay, so that challenge could be brought by somebody who's not even a parent, doesn't even have to live in the district necessarily.
Yeah, I believe, because we talk about community standards, and I know that even as someone that does not have children in public school anymore, they're grown and graduated, thank the Lord, but I think there is still it is still proper for a community and people that support a community to have a say, or at least a pathway to determine what those community standards would be. I know all the time, on our public education committee, we have grandparents for public schools that come and testify, that really are, one generation removed from a student, but still have every role to make their voice heard and are concerned about issues in their community and in their schools.
Now, I don't think we completely disagree on that. I think where I'm concerned is the fact that somebody who doesn't even have a connection to the school district or to the education portion of the school district could say, I think Harry Potter is encouraging beliefs in Wicca, let's challenge it. And the district's going to have to pull all of those books. And I mentioned Harry Potter because it's an example everybody knows, but we have people who sincerely believe books with magic and witches and whatnot don't belong on library shelves. Yeah. And I'm really concerned that this removal of the book during consideration is going to enable those people to dramatically disrupt our libraries.
Yeah, I don't agree. I think a lot of times, and I appreciate, but I think sometimes we take or create, and I don't think you're creating, but you create an example of something that may have occurred in a one-off situation, and then apply that as if that would be uniform. I do think, as a state representative, the parents and community members that have talked to me about their concerns about...
The gentleman's time has expired.
All right. Mr. Speaker, I move adoption of the Conference Committee report for Senate Bill 13.